أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله، صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنة. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, my dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last night we explored the question of why we continuously hold sessions of mourning for Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And we indicated that the recounting of the suffering of believers is a Quranic principle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in many verses of the Quran, He captures and He enshrines the struggles of past believers in order for us to be inspired by those struggles and to also draw strength from the fact that those who came before us struggled and were steadfast when it came to preserving their faith. We also looked at the ahadith where the Prophet ﷺ, over 50 years before Karbala, the Prophet ﷺ is crying over the tragedy of Imam al-Husayn before it even happened. And we looked at many ahadith where different angels are descending upon the Prophet and giving him the tragic news of the martyrdom of his beloved grandson. And they also bring for him the soil from the land of Karbala. And this established for us that crying for Imam al-Husayn is actually the established practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if someone wants to be a true Sunni, you have to cry for Imam al-Husayn. You have to sanctify the turba of Karbala, because this is the practice of Rasulullah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran, He says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Now what we find in the traditions of Ahlul Bayt is that the martyrdom of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam is unlike anything in human history. And it's not only that the Prophet, Ahlul Bayt, and the believers cry for Imam al-Husayn. We have a narration from Al-Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha, salawatullahi alayhi, where the Imam, he gives us a window into the magnitude of this tragedy. Shaykh al-Saduq in his book Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, what does he say? Imam al-Ridha is speaking to Rayyan ibn Shabib. And after mentioning some aspects of the tragedy of Karbala, he says, وَلَقَدْ بَكَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ السَّبْعُ وَالْأَرَضُونَ لِقَتْلِهِ. When Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, he says, verily, the seven heavens and the earth wept for Imam al-Husayn. So when you cry for Imam al-Husayn, you're actually joining the rest of creation. Now you might wonder, how is it possible for the heavens and the earth to cry? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He reminds us time and time again that the things that you think are inanimate, they actually have awareness. يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. If the heavens and the earth glorifies Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it does tasbih, that means it has what? It has a degree of awareness. And if it has the ability to do tasbih, it has the ability to mourn the one who preserved the institution of tasbih. Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam is saying that the tragedy of Imam al-Husayn was a cataclysmic event in creation. Everything recognizes this great sacrifice. And then the Imam alayhi salam, he says, وَلَقَدْ نَزَلَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ أَرْبَعَةُ آلَافٍ لِنَصْرِهِ. We know in the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in the battles of Badr, for example, the believers were outnumbered, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent angels to fortify the believers. This is mentioned in the Quran. So we know that malaika, they come to the aid of mu'mineen when they are fighting against evil and corruption and oppression. Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, he says something similar happened on the day of Ashura. He says 4,000 angels, they descended when they heard the call of Imam al-Husayn. أَلَا هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنصُرُنَا. They descended from the heavens. فَوَجَدُوهُ قَدْ قُتِلٍ. When they arrived, when they descended from those higher worlds, they arrived and the Imam was already martyred. They didn't get there on time. And of course, this was the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, then he speaks to us about these 4,000 angels who rushed and descended upon Karbala to aid Imam al-Husayn, just like the angels aided the believers in Badr. فَهُمْ عِنْدَ قَبْرِهِ شُعْثٌ غُبْرٌ إِلَىٰ أَن يَقُومَ الْقَائِمُ. Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, he says, these 4,000 angels, they have remained since the year 61 after Hijrah. They have remained around the grave of Imam al-Husayn. And the Imam, he says, these angels are shu'thun ghubrun, which means that they are grief-stricken and they are disheveled. And they will remain there on standby until the dhuhur of the 12th Imam. And then Imam Rada, what does he say? فَيَكُونُونَ مِنْ أَنصَارِهِ. These angels will be among the supporters of the 12th Imam, وَشِعَارُهُمْ, and their slogan, their battle cry in Akhir al-Zaman will be what? يَا لِثَارَاتِ الْحُسَيْنِ. That the slogan of this angelic army is that we will avenge what happened to Hussein. Why is this? Because the killing of Imam al-Husayn is not the killing of an individual. There were many good people who have been killed in human history. But the niyyah, the intention behind the killing of Imam al-Husayn was not just the killing of an individual. In Ziarat al-Nahiya al-Muqaddasa, Imam al-Mahdi, what does he teach us to say to Imam al-Husayn? He wants us to recognize why Imam al-Husayn was killed. He addresses his grandfather, لَقَدْ قَتَلُوا بِقَتْلِكَ الْإِسْلَامِ. They were trying to destroy Islam. They were trying to turn back the hands of time to go back to the time of Jahiliyyah. Therefore, this was a battle between haqq and batil. This was a battle between Islam and kufr, between Islam and nifaq, and this is exactly the battle in Akhir al-Zaman. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز به الإسلام وأهله وتذل به النفاق وأهله. The battle between haqq and nifaq. Now in these days, there are millions of people who are moving towards Karbala, towards the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam. And it's very important for us, especially for those of us who have never made the trip. You know, Karbala, the ziyarah, has been open for over 20 years. And many of us, we have the financial means to go visit Imam al-Husayn. But perhaps we make excuses and we don't understand the value of this ziyarah. When we address Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, what do we say? When we address any of the Imams, we say, بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي. This is a very heavy statement. بِأَبِي أَنْتَ وَأُمِّي means, Ya Aba Abdullah, may my mother and my father be sacrificed for you. We know the position of parents in Islam. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks to us about our duty towards our parents, what does He say? وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. Allah mentions Tawheed, and then immediately after Tawheed, being good to your parents. These same parents who Allah commands us to be good to, when we address Imam al-Husayn, we say, these parents, may they be sacrificed for you. I ask you, if someone does not visit their mother or their father for 20 years, what do you say about such a person? Wouldn't this person be aaq? Wouldn't have they fallen short in their duty? My dear brothers and sisters, if you and I have had the ability to visit Imam al-Husayn and we haven't done it, we have not fulfilled the right of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn upon us. I want to share with you in the time that we have tonight, and it's a Saturday night, so I'm going to take my time with your permission. Do you give me permission? Sallu ala Muhammad. I want to share with you a couple of ahadith, and I'll end with the story, so you know what the plan is, inshallah. I'll try to be respectful of your time, but as I said, you have to also be a little bit merciful with me and give me some time. There's a narration in a very important book known as Kamil al-Ziarat by Ibn Qawlaway al-Qummi, who died in 367 after the Hijrah. He was one of the teachers of Shaykh al-Mufid. If you go to Kadhmiya, if you go to the Haram of Imam al-Kadhim and Imam al-Jawad, he's buried in the Haram. He's buried there. He wrote a book called Kamil al-Ziarat, which is a collection of the ziyarat of Ahlul Bayt and also a collection of the ahadith that speak about the merits and the virtues of the ziyarah. There are over 800 ahadith in this book. And I always tell mu'mineen that in the month of Muharram, in the month of Safar, try to read the ahadith from this book, so we understand the value of the ziyarah of Ahlul Bayt. There's a hadith in Kamil Ziarat where a man by the name of Muawiyah ibn Wahab, he was a companion of Imam al-Sadiq. He says, I went to visit Imam al-Sadiq one day. I went and I was given permission to enter the house. So I go into the room that the Imam was in, which is the room that was designated for his ibadah. The Imam, he had a place in his home where he would do his salah, his dua, his munajat. He said, I came in the room and the Imam was in salah. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq was doing his salah. He says, I waited for the Imam to finish. Imam, he finished his prayer. Then after the prayer, the Imam went into sujood. Muawiyah ibn Wahab, he says, I heard the following dua from Imam al-Sadiq in sujood. You know, it's one thing for the Imam to make a dua, but to make a dua in sujood after salah. This means that the Imam is choosing the time and the place where the dua is most likely to be accepted. So what does he say? He recorded this dua for us. Allahumma ya man khassana bil karama. The Imam begins with gratitude to Allah. Oh Allah, oh the one who singled us out with special honor. وَوَعَدَنَا بِالشَّفَاعَةِ, and who has given us a promise that on the day of Qiyamah we will be able to intercede for the sinners, for those who fall short, who cannot make it to Jannah through their a'mal. وَخَصَّنَا بِالْوَصِيَّةِ, and he singled us out as the successors of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he says, وَأَعْطَانَا عِلْمَ مَا مَضَى. Allah is the one who gave us the knowledge of the past. وَعِلْمَ مَا بَقِيَ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Imam is explaining that we don't have any inherent knowledge of the unseen. Everything that we have is from Allah. The knowledge of the past, the knowledge of what is to come. وَجَعَلَ أَفْئِدَةَ النَّاسِ تَهْوِي إِلَيْنَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has made the hearts of people inclined to us. And then what does the Imam say? So the dua begins with this shukr, this gratitude for these great merits. And then the Imam says, he says, اغفر لي, oh Allah, forgive me. وَلِإِخْوَانِي, and forgive my brothers, my brethren. وَزُوَّارِ قَبْرِ أَبِيَ الْحُسَيْنِ. Imam al-Sadiq is in sujood, and he's saying, oh Allah, please forgive, please pardon the Zuwar of Hussein. And then he starts to speak about the struggles that the Zuwar face. Who are these Zuwar of Imam al-Hussein? Why are they so special? الَّذِينَ أَنفَقُوا أَمْوَالَهُمْ وَأَشْخَصُوا أَبْدَانَهُمْ. To visit Imam al-Hussein, we have to sacrifice some of our money. We have to give. And for many people, it's not cheap to go on ziyarat. There is a financial sacrifice. The Imam is mentioning this. He's acknowledging this financial sacrifice. وَأَشْخَصُوا أَبْدَانَهُمْ. And they tire their bodies. Especially in Arba'een, you see people walking. You even see video footage of old women who walk from Basra all the way. For 2 weeks, they're walking under the sun. Where does this strength come from? It's the love of Imam al-Hussein that's pulling them. Why are they doing this? Why all of this money? Why all of this exhaustion? For what? رَغْبَةً فِي بِرِّنَا. Because they want to be dutiful to us. In the same way that a child wants to be dutiful to their parent, Ahlul Bayt, they are our spiritual parents. رَغْبَةً فِي بِرِّنَا وَرَجَاءً لِمَا عِنْدَكَ فِي صِلَتِنَا. Oh Allah, these zuwar, they are seeking the reward that is with you for maintaining a connection with us, Ahlul Bayt. وَسُرُورًا أَدْخَلُوهُ عَلَى نَبِيِّكَ. These zuwar of Imam al-Husayn, they're doing this because they want to bring joy to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Because they know how beloved Husayn was to you. And they know that visiting Imam al-Husayn will make the Prophet happy. And this is enough for them to travel thousands of miles, to sacrifice, because the pleasure of Rasulullah is the most important thing to them. وَإِجَابَةً مِّنْهُمْ لِأَمْرِنَا. And they're doing this. They're coming from all around the world to visit Imam al-Husayn, as Imam al-Sadiq says, because they are responding to our command. Because all of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they said, Ziarat al-Husayn. Go visit Imam al-Husayn. Whether there is fear, whether your lives are in danger, do not abandon the grave of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. وَغَيْظًا أَدْخَلُوهُ عَلَىٰ عَدُوِّنَا. They have so much enmity for our enemies that part of the reason why they go on ziyarah is just to be a thorn in the sides of the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. And the Imam is saying that we appreciate this fearless spirit. أَرَادُوا بِذَلِكَ رِضَاكَ. Oh Allah, ultimately what they want is your pleasure. Because you are the one who chose Imam al-Husayn. You are the one who made him Sayyid Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. You are the one who made him Imamun Muftarad al-Ta'a, an Imam whose obedience is obligatory upon the believers. فَكَافِهِمْ عَنَّا بِالرِّضْوَانِ. Imam al-Sadiq, look at the humility of Imam al-Sadiq. He says, oh Allah, compensate them on our behalf by being pleased with them. Is there anything that's greater than the pleasure of Allah? وَرَضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. And then he says, وَأَكْلَأْهُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Oh Allah, protect them in the day and in the night. Imam al-Sadiq is continuing. You notice he doesn't just make a short dua for the zuwar of Imam al-Husayn. The entire dua is about praying for the zuwar of Imam Husayn. What does he say? He says, وَخْلُفْ عَلَىٰ أَهَالِيهِمْ وَأَوْلَادِهِمْ الَّذِينَ خُلِّفُوا بِأَحْسَنِ الْخَلَفِ. Don't just reward them, O Allah. Compensate their families and their children who had to stay behind. Sometimes you go for ziyarah and your wife has to stay behind. Your children have to stay behind. Your parents have to stay behind. Your nieces, your nephews. Imam al-Sadiq, he says, oh Allah, honor the zuwar of Imam al-Husayn by also compensating the ones that these zuwar left behind. Include them in the reward. Include them in the thawab. وَاصْحَبْهُمْ. And oh Allah, be with them, be their sahib on this journey to Imam al-Husayn. وَكْفِهِمْ شَرَّ كُلِّ جَبَّارٍ عَنِيدٍ. And protect them from the evil of any stubborn, arrogant tyrant. Subhanallah. You look at someone like Saddam, la'natullahi alayh, who tried to stop the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. If you look at images from the 90s, in Arba'in, Karbala is empty. And now look what happened. Look what happened. Saddam Hussein, they found him like a rat. Saddam Hussein is swept into the dustpan of history, and you see the flag of Imam al-Husayn. No one mentions Saddam anymore. There are now over 20 million people heading towards Karbala as we speak, and they're all saying in Arabic, in Farsi, in Urdu, in English, in Mandarin, in every language, they're all saying, Labbayka ya Hussein. Then the Imam alayhi salam, what does he say? He continues, and I'll just mention some of the excerpts. He says, Allahumma inna a'da'ana abu alayhim bi khurujihim. Subhanallah. Imam al-Sadiq says, oh Allah, our enemies, they have mocked our followers for going out for this ziyarah. If you look at the world today, every arba'een, Shi'as are mushrikeen, Shi'as are grave worshippers, Shi'as are this, Shi'as are that. Imam al-Sadiq, he mentioned this 13 centuries ago. He says, oh Allah, our followers, when they go for the ziyarah, they are ridiculed. They're made fun of. They're called deviants, misguided. But what does the Imam say? فَلَمْ يَنْهَهُمْ ذَلِكَ عَنِ الشُّخُوصِ إِلَيْنَا. But our Shia, they don't care what anyone says about them. They don't care about the slander. They don't care about the taunting. They don't care about the mockery. For them, it goes in one ear, out the other, because their eyes are on the qubbah of Imam al-Husayn. خِلَافًا مِّنْهُمْ عَلَى مَنْ خَالَفَنَا. Because our Shia, they will always go against the ones who go against us, Ahlul Bayt. And then look at what he says. Look at the language of love. He says, فَارْحَمْ تِلْكَ الْوُجُوهِ الَّتِي غَيَّرَتْهَا الشَّمْسِ. Imam al-Sadiq says, oh Allah, have mercy on the faces of the Zuwar, the faces that the sun has changed its color. Especially when the summertime, you see how the faces are darkened, how the skin is burned because of the rays of the sun. Imam al-Sadiq says, oh Allah, have rahmah on those faces. Have mercy on those faces. وَارْحَمْ تِلْكَ الْخُدُودِ التي تتقلب على حضرة أبي عبد الله الحسين. Oh Allah, have mercy on the cheeks that rub their cheeks on the ضريح of Imam al-Husayn. وارحم تلك الأعين التي جرت دموعها رحمة لنا. Oh Allah, have mercy on those tears that are shed out of mercy for us. وارحم تلك القلوب التي جزعت واحترقت لنا. Have mercy on those hearts that are burning with anguish for us, Ahlul Bayt. وارحم تلك الصرخة التي كانت لنا. Oh Allah, have mercy on the screams, the wailing that is done for us. You know, some of us, when we go into the haram, we might not like how loud some of the zuwar are. We might not like that people are wailing out loud, but we have to respect those cries. Because Imam al-Sadiq says, may Allah have mercy on those cries. May Allah have mercy upon those mu'mineen who, when they walk and they enter into the presence of Imam al-Husayn, they lose control. And how could you not lose control? How could you not lose control when we're talking about an Imam, where Imam Zainul Abidin, when he came to Karbala, he had to gather the pieces of Imam al-Husayn on a palm leaf. If there's anything that is worth crying about, that is worth wailing about, it's Imam al-Husayn. Allahumma inni astawdi'uka tilka al-abdan wa tilka al-anfus. Look at what Imam al-Sadiq is saying. He says, oh Allah, I entrust these bodies and these souls to you. The bodies of the Zuwar of Imam al-Husayn. I entrust them to you. Oh Allah, the Zuwar of Imam al-Husayn, they're an amana that I'm putting in your hands. حتى توفيهم على الحوض يوم العطش الأكبر. I entrust them to you until the day of Qiyamah, until they reach the pool of Kawthar and they see Ahlul Bayt there, and that they see Rasulullah there. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Ahlul Bayt, through the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen, He quenches the thirst of the zuwar of His son. And this is what we yearn for. Is there anything that is more important in life than to reach this? There's a narration that I want to share with you, and then I'll mention the story that I'll share. Speaking about not just the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn, but the act of going to Karbala. Yes, you can visit Imam al-Husayn from anywhere, but nothing compares to physically going to Karbala. Al-Imam Ali al-Hadi salawatullahi alayhi, our 10th Imam, the narration says that he became very ill. He was sick. He was in Samarra. And the Imam alayhi salam, as he's sick, he says to his companion, Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari, he says, I want you to find someone and send them to Karbala, so that they can go make dua near the grave of Imam al-Husayn for my shifa. So Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari, he goes out and he finds one of the Shia, Ali ibn Bilal. He says to him that Imam al-Hadi is ill and he wants someone, one of the Shia, to go to Karbala and make dua for his shifa, for his recovery. Ali ibn Bilal, he was confused. He said to Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari that Imam al-Hadi is an Imam, just like Imam al-Husayn is an Imam. He's ma'soom. Why doesn't he make a dua for himself? Why does he want someone to go to Karbala? The Imam, his dua is answered wherever. So Abu Hashim al-Ja'fari, he did not know how to answer this. He thought to himself that it makes sense. Imam al-Hadi is an Imam, just like Imam al-Husayn is an Imam. So he goes to him and he says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, Ali ibn Bilal is going to go, but he just wants a clarification. Why do you want someone to go to Karbala to make dua for you? Why don't you just make dua from here? Imam al-Hadi, do you know what he says? He says, كان رسول الله أفضل من البيت والحجر. Imam al-Hadi, he says, Rasulullah is more beloved to Allah than the Kaaba and Hajar al-Aswad. وكان يطوف بالبيت ويستلم الحجر. But yet Rasulullah would go to Kaaba and he would kiss Hajar al-Aswad. Why? Not because Kaaba is better than the Prophet. He says, وَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ تَعَالَى بِقَاعًا يُحِبُّ أَن يُدْعَى فِيهَا. Imam al-Hadi says, Allah has certain places on earth that He loves for people to supplicate in those places. فَيَسْتَجِيبَ لِمَن دَعَى. And He will answer the du'as of people if they go to certain places. وَالْحَائِرُ مِنْهَا. And one of those places is the grave of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. So we shouldn't underestimate the ziyarah of Imam al-Husayn. Now I want to share a very beautiful story that I'll hope you'll remember and you'll hold very dear to your heart until your last breath. A story that will make you and I truly appreciate the barakah of ziyarat al-Imam al-Husayn. Over 100 years ago, there was a great marji' living in Al-Najaf al-Ashraf, Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi, Sahib al-Urwat al-Wuthqa. If you go to the Haram of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's buried in one of the rooms in the courtyard. He wrote one of the most important legal manuals in Shia Islamic law, known as Al-Urwatul Wuthqa. And any marji' that came after him to prove their ijtihad, they would write footnotes or a commentary on Al-Urwatul Wuthqa. That all of the Risala Amaliyas today, they basically follow the same structure of Al-Urwatul Wuthqa. A scholar of the highest eminence. He was from Yazd in Iran. Towards the end of his life, he was yearning to go back and visit the place of his birth. This is over 100 years ago. Now, of course, being a marji', being a man who was also quite old at the time, he thought to himself that, these journeys are quite long. It takes weeks to get to Yazd because you're traveling in caravans, on horses, on camels. He says that I should prepare my wasiyah and bring a kafan with me in case I pass away on this journey, because Malakul Maut can take us anytime. So he starts to prepare for this journey to Yazd. So what does he do? He purchases a kafan. And of course, because he's a marji', he knows what is beneficial to write on this kafan. In Najaf, there was a very holy, a very righteous person that he summoned, and he said that I want you to write the entire Quran by hand while you're sitting next to the dharih of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. After 1 month, every day he would write a juz'. After a month, they finished writing the entire Quran on the kafan of Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi. Before he goes to Yazd, he does wada' of Imam Husayn. He goes to Karbala, and Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi, with his own hands, he writes Ziarat Ashura on his kafan. So he prepares the best kafan. He does all of the mustahabbat and he prepares this kafan. He takes it with him and he goes towards Yazd. Because he's al-marji' al-a'la, there are many mu'mineen, many ulama who join him on this journey. So they travel from Najaf to Yazd. After many, many days of traveling, over a week, 2 weeks, they finally arrive in Yazd. It's been decades since he's seen the place of his birth. He's excited to see his family, his old friends, his neighbors. He spends the first night in Yazd. The night that he arrived, he sees a dream. And I'm not one to share dreams unless I hear it from reliable people. That night he arrived in Yazd, he sees a dream. In the dream, he sees Imam al-Husayn. Imam al-Husayn in the dream, he says, Ya Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim, give this kafan to Karim al-Aswad. He wakes up. Who is Karim al-Aswad? He doesn't know who this person is. He asks his family, relatives, do you guys know someone by the name of Karim al-Aswad? They said, no, we don't know. So he decides to go back to sleep. The next day, the same night, he has a dream. Imam al-Husayn comes to him again. Ya Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim, give this kafan to Karim al-Aswad. He wakes up. Very unusual dream. Now he starts to panic. What's going on? Neighbors, he's asking. No one knows who Karim al-Aswad is. I have to give this kafan to him? Who is this person? A third time he falls asleep. Again, Imam al-Husayn tells him, Ya Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim, give this kafan now to Karim al-Aswad. So he wakes up, he says to his family, take me to the nearby cemetery. Who else would need a kafan other than a mayyit? So they take him. He goes to the cemetery. He sees a mughtasal, where they do ghusl, in the middle of the cemetery, and he sees there's a light inside. So there are people that are inside doing ghusl. It's dark and he's walking. Someone comes out of the mughtasal and comes to him and says, Sayyidina, give me the kafan. So he says, how do you know who I am? Who are you? The man who came, he said, Sayyidina, the one who sent you to give the kafan sent me to receive it from you. So Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Yazdi, he says, what's happening? What's going on? They say there is a man who passed away last night by the name of Karim al-Aswad. He says, who is this Karim al-Aswad that I am handing over this kafan that I've spent months preparing? Who is this person? They say he's an ordinary person. He's a construction worker in Yazd. So he says, no, there has to be something different about him. So they ask around, and the Sayyid discovers that this man had a very difficult life. He was one of those people who was working 16 hours a day, construction, in the summers and the winters. An ordinary person. But there's one thing that he used to do every day. He would recite the Ziarat of Imam Husayn. After a long day of work, he's exhausted. And sometimes he would just look towards Karbala and say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. And he committed himself to this ziyarah. Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim, he said, look at how Allah honored the Za'ir of Imam al-Husayn. He dragged the Marji' al-A'la from Najaf. He wrote the Quran on this kafan. Ziarat Ashura was written on this kafan, and he made me a khadim of the Za'ir of Imam al-Husayn. So my humble plea to all of you, and a reminder to myself, is every year, if you can, go and visit Imam al-Husayn. And if you cannot visit Imam al-Husayn, visit him from afar. If you can't recite Ziyarat Ashura, at least one time every day before you do your salah, before you read Quran, just say Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Because everything that we have, everything is from Imam al-Husayn. Why? Because Imam al-Husayn gave everything for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And anything that is connected to Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, it has so much barakah. And it's not just Imam al-Husayn. Anyone who's connected to Imam al-Husayn, especially the children of Imam al-Husayn. As the saying goes, al-mar'u yuhfadhu fi wuldihi. That a person is preserved through their family, through their children. You know, in these nights, we remember the awlad of Imam al-Husayn. You know, in the ziyarah, we mention them as a standalone category. Assalamu alayka ya Aba, assalamu ala al-Husayn, wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn, wa ala awlad al-Husayn. And then we mention the ashab of Imam al-Husayn. Look at how pure the children of Imam al-Husayn are, that we send salam to them before we send salam to the ashab. Because when you're young, typically your tolerance for pain and suffering is less. When you're young, usually a young person has limits in terms of what they can handle, what they can endure. This is what makes the ashab of the awlad of Imam al-Husayn so special. If you've ever traveled with children, you know that usually the first ones to start complaining when the journey becomes long and difficult are who? Children. They're the ones who complain. But you know what's remarkable about Imam al-Husayn? Is that from Medina all the way to the last moment, they never said to Imam al-Husayn, Ya Aba Abdullah, why did you bring us here? They never blamed him. They complained about their enemies, but they understood what Imam al-Husayn was trying to achieve. And that's why when you look at the task of Sayyidah Zainab, she had a very difficult task. You know, usually when you lose a loved one, the entire community, they come together. And they say to you, Ahsan Allah lakum al-aza. They send their condolences to you. If your spouse passes away, your child passes away, your parent passes away, the community, they will cook food for you for 3 days. Why do they do that? Because they want you to just process the grief. They want to remove any of these burdens. They don't want you to think about cooking and cleaning, because this is how you show rahmah to people. But look at what they did to Sayyidah Zainab. Was there anyone to say to her, O Zainab, ahsan Allahu laki al-aza? Was there anyone who was giving her food or water? She was left with widows and orphans. She comes to Imam Zainul Abidin, Ya ibn Rasulullah, we have no one but you. What should we do? They're burning the tents. Where are we going to go? What should I do with these children? The first command of Imam Zainul Abidin as an imam after Imam al-Husayn, he says to Zainab and the women and the children, all that I can tell you is run. All that I can tell you is run. Save yourselves. So all of these children, they run through the deserts. Zainab, she has a responsibility now. Imam al-Husayn said to her, O Zainab, I want you to take care of the children. She sees all of these children running frantically, and she realizes that I cannot manage the women and the children if everyone is running. So one by one, she picks up these children, these broken-hearted orphans, these widows, and she gathers them all in a burned tent. Imagine. And they say that she starts to take attendance. She starts counting, one by one. Is everyone here? Are we missing anyone? Some of the poets, some of the reciters, they say that there were a couple of people who kept on being absent. She looks around and she says, where is Rabab? Where's Rabab? How come Rabab is not here? Sayyidah Zainab says, everyone stay here. I'm going to go look for Rabab. She goes and she finds Rabab beside the grave of Ali al-Asghar. You know, when a mother loses a child, she cannot process that loss. She still talks to the child as if the child is alive. She says to him, oh my beloved son, I have milk for you now. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam is looking. There's another person who's missing. She's counting one by one. She asks, where is Sukayna? Where is the beloved daughter of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn? You know, they say that they brought water to the children. Umar ibn Sa'ad, he says, if we want to keep them alive, we have to give water to the women and the children. Those children, when they were given water, it said that they did not drink the water. Some of those children, they went to the body of Imam al-Husayn. And you can imagine these children sitting beside Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, and saying to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, did they give you water before they killed you? But Hamid ibn Muslim, he says that after the tents were burned, he says there is a sight that I will never forget. He says after they set the tents ablaze, قال رأيت صبية تتراكض في البيداء وقد تعلقت النيران في ثيابها. He says, I saw a young girl who was running. She was running in the open desert. But what caught my eye is that her dress was on fire. If you look at these children in Gaza, if you look at the fire, if you look at the suffering, I want you to think about what happened to Imam Husayn and his companions and his family. He says, I saw her, I felt sorry for her. He says, I went to her. قال دنوت منها لأطفئ النار. He says, I wanted to go to extinguish the flames from her dress. But this was a day of suffering for them, a day of fear. فلما دنوت منها ارتعدت فرائصها وخافت. The daughters of the caravan of Imam al-Husayn, they're not used to strange men approaching them. He says, as soon as I came to her, she was terrified. She was shaking with fear. She looked at me and she said, Ya hadha amta lana am alayna. She said to him, are you with us or are you against us? قال لا لكم ولا عليكم. I'm not with you nor am I against you. She says to him, يا عم هل قرأت القرآن? Have you ever recited the Quran? قال نعم, I've read the Quran. Why are you asking me about the Quran? She says to him, have you read the word of Allah? فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. Have you read the ayah where Allah says, and do not reproach the orphan? He says, yes, I've read it. Which orphan are you? قالت أنا يتيمة أبي عبد الله الحسين. She says, I am the orphan daughter of Husayn. He says to her, is there anything that I can do for you? Can I help you? She says to him, خذني إلى الغريب. She says, I want you to take me to Najaf. Why? She says, أخبرتني عمتي زينب أن لنا قبرا في الغريب قبر جدي علي بن أبي طالب ما أتاه مكروب ولا طالب حاجة إلا قضى الله حاجته. Because my aunt Zainab, she told me that I have a grandfather who's buried in Najaf. And she said to me that if I ever feel scared, if there's ever anything that I need, I should go there and make dua there. Because Allah will answer my dua for the sake of my grandfather. He says to her that Najaf is too far. I cannot take you to Najaf. Is there any other place that I can take you? قالت خذني إلى شط الفرات. She says, take me to the bank of the Euphrates. He says, I thought to myself that she's thirsty. That's why she wants to go to Al-Furat. He says, I was walking with her. As we were getting closer, she started to run. She started to run faster and faster. But ya mu'mineen, she was not running towards the water. She started to run to a body that was beside Shatt al-Furat. He says, I saw her throw herself on a body that did not have any arms. And she cried out, Ya Abbas, Ya Qamar al-Ashira, Qum wanzur madha sana'u bina. Oh Abbas, wake up, please get up. Oh Abbas, look what they are doing to us. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept these tears, to illuminate our hearts with the teachings of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We ask you, O Allah, to never deprive us of the ziyarah of Imam Husayn. We ask you, O Allah, to include us in the shafa'ah of Imam Husayn on the Day of Judgment. يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.